Chapter 14. I had some regrets. In long nights awake, listening to the wind or rain or the shrill of night insects, I thought of nights in Mrs. Bond's house when I'd been nestled cozily in bed between Mary Agnes and Leola. At my loneliest times, I wished Jamie and I had been in less of a hurry to do what our bodies urged, for if we'd been more patient and more prudent, we might now be in Fargo with my family. I tried to imagine what they were doing. I hoped Margaret or Uncle Bert would write soon. The next Saturday, Jamie came home in a bad mood. I always knew how he felt about anything, and I partly admired his honest reactions. For myself, though, I didn't know how I'd get through my days and nights if I couldn't look on the bright side of everything. I did not tell Jamie to look on the bright side, and I agreed he'd been unfairly treated. The camp boss had docked Jamie's pay, accusing him of stealing from the kitchen. "1 loaf of bread," Jamie said. "If I'd stayed in camp for the weekend, I'd have eaten a lot more than a sorry loaf of bread." Maybe he'd forgotten I was baking bread now. Last week, along with the wire he'd carried from the store on Russell's horse, he'd brought a 20-pound sack of flour and a jar of yeast. He expended the energy of his rage on the hog lot. I helped, holding boards in place while he hammered, and after a while he settled down. "I'm sorry," he said. "I do kind of hang around the camp kitchen, but that's 'cause I'd like to be a cook someday and I'm trying to see how he does things. They tell me the cook has the best wages of any man in camp. I've got no chance getting on his crew, though, 'cause he's taken against me. I wasn't stealing that bread, I was admiring it." I thought this was odd, for Jamie had shown no interest in cooking when he was home. But I said I was sorry, too. He leaned over and gave me a quick, sweaty kiss. "You bring out the good in me. I know I've a speck of good because Ma said I did." He laughed, and after that his mood improved. The hog lot included a board fence with a gate and a small board and tin house set up on rocks. We finished it that weekend and looked on our work with pride. That was what life was about, I thought, devoting our days not just to our pleasures, but doing something for the future. "Next Saturday we'll get a young sow from Russell," Jamie said, "one we can breed for litters of our own." I asked what a young pig would cost, but Jamie was pretty sure his brother would give it to us. "I'll say we got a wedding gift coming." He laughed again. I was happy to hear him say I would be going too. I hadn't been away from the house since we'd bought the chicks, so I was excited about the change of scenery, even if I doubted Russell would be glad to see me. Jamie said it wasn't anything against me. Russell just didn't like women, and maybe he would give us the pig. I wondered if he still had apples. I'd planted the seeds from the apples he'd given me, and now had 4 tender saplings growing in cans. Saturday, I carried the quilt I'd finished, so we'd have a nice pad to lie on in Russell's corn crib. We slept the night there, eating the bread I'd brought along because Russell offered nothing. Jamie waited until we were ready to go the next morning to choose our pig. As I'd feared, Russell wasn't about to give it away. Jamie said, "I think I'm due a lot more than a pig from our home place. Why should you have it all?" Russell stood his ground. "Where was you when I was patching up and planting all this here? Where was you when Ma was sick?" Then, seeing the quilt bundled under my arm, Russell said, "I'll take that there quilt for a pig." Surprised, I stiffened my arm over the quilt, but Jamie eased the quilt away. "It's nice and plump," he said. But when Jamie started to put a noose around the neck of his chosen pig, Russell said, "Not that there. Take the runt." They had more angry words, and I stepped away and tried not to listen, but in the end we went home with the runt. Clearly the little pig did not want to go, and she did not walk obediently at the end of her rope, and I was distressed at her squeals and the way Jamie jerked the rope and hit her with a stick to make her walk along. Finally, when we were all tired, Jamie wrapped her in his shirt and tied it over his back, saying, "She's going to get beat if she shits on me." I prayed the little creature would not. By the time we reached home, it was nearly time for Jamie to catch the supply train back to camp, so while he settled the little pig in the hog lot, I bundled a set of his clean clothes and brought him a nice drink of water from the spring house. After he left, I poured a bucket full of water in the V-shaped pig trough he'd made of boards, then leaned over the fence and watched her drink. I didn't know what to feed her because my uncle had not raised pigs. but Jamie said she'd eat about anything. He said wild pigs got along on roots and all kinds of greens and bugs. I pulled the roots of the cut cabbages, but she didn't seem interested in those. I also gave her some of the half-dead bean plants and a heel of stale bread. She ate the bread. That evening, she whined so pitifully that I carried her to the house and set her on my lap. She seemed to like that, and as the sun went down, I stroked her fat belly and scratched her ears and let her eat a morsel of cornbread from my hand. "Nellie," I said, "you're my Nellie." I fell asleep like that, and when I woke, she was snoring. Not wanting to find my way to the hog lot in the dark, I carried her inside and let her sleep beside me on the bed. At times that week, I wished I was anywhere but here. Other days seemed nearly perfect. Watching the leaves turn from green to red and yellow, Nellie nearby as I stitched the second quilt, shredded the cabbages and salted them in a crock. I was proud when she left me to explore the clearing and when she returned to sit with me on the porch. I was careful to feed her only in the hog lot so she'd be used to it when Jamie came home. Like me, she liked cornmeal mush. Saturday afternoon and Sunday morning, Jamie and I devoted almost every waking hour to cutting wood, for he did not want me to be cold in the winter ahead. Wood warmed a person twice, he said, once when it was cut and again when it was burned. He wielded the axe and saw and showed me how to use the hatchet to split off slivers of wood for kindling. I didn't want to think about winter, but I vowed to be strong for him. Hoping we'd go to town soon, each evening the next week I worked on another letter to my family, describing our progress and stressing Jamie's hard work and concern for my welfare. I wrote everything slowly after much consideration, afraid my family might misinterpret. I did not describe my loneliness nor how it felt to be adored by Jamie Long. When we were together, I believed those hours would sustain me forever, the memory of his weary face brightening each time he jumped off the log train, how he stopped and looked at me in the midst of his work, how tenderly he rested his cheek to mine, the growing familiarity and freedom of his body beside me in the night. Was this worth everything? I thought it was. I couldn't write those things to my family. Every Friday morning I woke up excited, thinking of Jamie's return, but on a Friday in early September, I felt an unusual burst of energy and positive feeling. Tomorrow we were to go to town. The weather had been lovely too, perfect for any kind of work, but in the night I woke up, very hot and sick to my stomach. About to throw up, I staggered outside to lean over the porch, and misjudging my location in the dark, I stepped over the edge to the ground, twisting my ankle. I screamed, but there was no one to hear or help. I turned to my side and retched and spit until I was faint. My ankle wouldn't bear my weight, and the night was cold and the ground was damp. I crawled to the step and back into the cabin. I slept and woke, hot and thirsty, and with the broom handle for a cane, got out of bed and hopped to the water pitcher. Through the window, I saw the drifting fog, and behind it, a train stopped on the tracks and passengers boarding with their boxes and bags. Opening the window, I called, "Wait!" The engineer waved, but my ankle hurt and I could not find my valise, and the train left without me. My first awareness in the morning was the despair of being forgotten and left, but then I knew the train had been a dream. There were no other people here. I felt slightly better when I heard the afternoon log train, but my throat was raw from throwing up, and I was exhausted from trying to do anything with only one good leg. Even so, I hopped to the doorway and waved as Jamie leaped to the ground and trudged toward me, his sack of clothes over his shoulder. His face was angry and red. Drawing near, he said, "Don't be waving like that. You don't know what kind of men them is." What kind of men? I thought the men on the flat car were his friends. I tried to speak, but mixed my words with gasps and sobs. "May Rose, what now? Stop that and talk plain." I sniffed back the moisture dripping from my nose. I wasn't waving at those men, I was waving at you, and there's no dinner made. He brushed past me into the house. "And you're still in your nightdress?" I hopped inside and sat on the bed. "Jamie, I've been sick, and I've hurt my ankle. I'm sorry to be so clumsy." At once his face and tone changed. "Oh, dearie, I'm sorry." He grabbed me in a hug that nearly pulled me over. "You can't walk? We were going to town today." I shook my head, holding on. He lifted a burlap bag from the nail where it hung. "I better get on then," he said. "You're going without me? So soon?" "If I don't go now, I won't get back before dark. You can't go, can you?" He gave me a quick kiss. "I'll get what we need." I didn't let myself cry again until he left. Then I hobbled around, spreading up the bed, putting beans and potatoes to cook with a bit of ham, wishing he'd put off the trip until I could go. The days had become shorter, and it was twilight when he emerged from the forest path, bent with a heavy load. "Look what I found," he said, laying his bundles on our table. From one of the sellers in the street, he'd bought a knitted cap for himself and wool coats for both of us. Mine reached to my ankles and was too broad in the shoulders, but it was warm and had only a few moth holes. He'd also bought a shotgun, a heavy double-barreled thing, and of this he seemed most proud. "Tomorrow I'll show you how to use it," he said. He'd eaten a sausage and a sweet pie in town, so he didn't want the meal I'd cooked, but he sat at the table for a cup of coffee. "I saw Russell in town, and here's the best news. If it don't rain Monday, he'll bring up some supplies I ordered." "Will you be here when he comes?" "Not on a Monday, no, but ain't you glad?" "Of course," I said. "Don't worry, he won't charge us nothing. You'll have a whole side of bacon, cornmeal, dried beans, and a sack of cracked corn for the chickens." It was no time to be particular about who delivered things we needed so badly. I envied women who lived in town and walked to the store any time they pleased. The next day, Jamie shaved the branches from a forked tree limb to create a crutch. I doubted I'd need the crutch very long because the swelling of my ankle was already going down, and I was starting to put a little weight on that foot. Then he showed me how to clean, load, and fire the shotgun, which was almost too heavy to hold. He was standing behind me when I pulled the triggers, and he caught me before the recoil pushed me to the ground. Then he laughed. "Holy hell, I never thought you'd try to pull both triggers at once. You got strong fingers, sweet pea, but next time, brace yourself before you fire, and just one barrel at a time, so you'll have the next one ready if you need it." How was I to know? And was I supposed to relax now, or should I be more worried and alert because he thought I'd need a gun?